2 weeks of planning, one whole night on the heist. And what do we got for it? 400 pounds of junk. Look, baby, the next time you get a hot idea on a heist...
You're traveling to another dimension. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
Normally, when we're about to dive into a Twilight Zone comedy episode, I might warn you to brace yourselves. But today, there's no bracing needed. As we all know, comedic entries in the fifth dimension aren't typically considered fan favorites.
You're a clod.
However, the episode we'll be discussing today, A Most Unusual Camera, is an example of a lighthearted Twilight Zone that mostly works. A Most Unusual Camera was episode 10 from season 2, it was written by Rod Serling, and it was directed by John Rich.
A hotel suite that in this instance serves as a den of crime. The aftermath of a rather minor event to be noted on a police blotter, an insurance claim, perhaps a 3-inch box on page 12 of the evening paper. Small addenda to be added to the list of the loot. A camera. A most unimposing addition to the flotsam and jetsam that it came with. But this camera, this one's unusual. Because in just a moment, we'll watch it inject itself into the destinies of 3 people. It happens to be a fact that the pictures that it takes can only be developed in the Twilight Zone.
The episode opens with a great in-scene narration from Rod Serling, and our players paused in the mirror behind him. Our leads are a husband and wife team of small-time crooks, Chester and Paula Dietrich, as played by Fred Clark and Gene Carson. The couple are hiding out in their hotel suite, and they're bummed because they just robbed a curio shop, but all they scored was several seemingly worthless items.
3 oil paintings by Picasso.
3 posters in frames. Guy that painted these thinks a Picasso is a foreign sports car.
The bickering between Chester and his wife is mostly played for laughs. Their back and forth banter perfectly establishes the tongue-in-cheek tone of this episode. And all things considered, their relationship isn't so bad in comparison to some of the other unhappily married couples we've seen in the series.
What makes you think I'm gonna cook for you after the way you talk to me? Baby, you drink your supper.
Oh, you witch.
Among the stolen goods, Chester discovers a mysterious item, an old box camera, that turns out to be anything but ordinary.
Say cheese.
Cheese.
After taking a picture of his wife, the camera somehow produces a photo of her wearing a fur coat. Moments later, Paula actually finds a fur coat and puts it on. So it would seem we have ourselves yet another magic item from the fifth dimension. This time, it's a camera that can predict the future. I think this is a clever premise. A window into the events that lie ahead is very fitting for this show, and as the episode unfolds, the concept is explored in some fun ways. The last remaining piece of this little tale is Paula's brother Woodward, as played by Adam Williams.
Hi, Paula. Hi, Chet. I didn't want to wake you, so I jimmied the door open.
Woodward, having escaped from prison, makes his predicted entrance based on another photo, which actually completely freaks him out.
How come?
So, how exactly does this trio make use of the camera's predictive abilities? Chester briefly considers the notion of using it for the good of mankind, but those plans are scrapped real fast when a televised horse race gives him the idea to use the camera to cheat at the racetrack.
We're gonna take a picture of the winning board at the racetrack. Before the race.
An underhanded but straightforward plan that anyone can understand.
No, I don't get it.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it.
From here on out, the episode takes off. We get some genuinely fun moments with Chester, Paula, and Woodward winning big money.
Open the bag, honey. I've run out of pockets.
This is easily my favorite sequence. They put their scheme into action, and it pays off.
90, 91, 92, 93.
This choice to use the camera to make some easy money is interesting. It makes us ask ourselves, would you do the same thing given these circumstances? Now, as we've seen before in stories like this, a happy ending is pretty unlikely, especially in the Twilight Zone where those who go down a shady path usually get some form of punishment. That said, when we see our trio back at the hotel suite celebrating their winnings, you get the sense that something's just bound to go wrong. Sure enough, a hotel waiter named Pierre, as played by Marcel Hilaire, takes note of their camera and translates its French inscription as 10 to an owner. Needless to say, the ambiguity of the French inscription puts a quick end to this party.
What we gotta do is hang on to it, save it for a rainy day.
No, we don't. We gotta
Eventually, Chester and Woodward get into a fight over how to use the final 2 photos and accidentally end up snapping another picture. This time, the photo reveals a terrified image of Paula. With that, Their conflict gets out of hand, and both men fall out an open window to their deaths. Paula's shocked reaction has now become a reality. In another comical moment, Paula goes from grief and despair to utter joy as she realizes now all the money is hers.
We must muddle through these things.
But it's around here that things get really odd. Paula snaps a 10th and final picture of the two dead bodies for posterity.
May you both rest in peace.
Okay, but it becomes obvious why this photo was taken, at least for story purposes.
Pardonnez-moi.
Surprise, the waiter from earlier, Pierre, comes back. Apparently he knows about the two guys that just went out the window, and he knows about Paula's criminal status. That being the case, he rips off Paula, since she isn't in the best position to call the police for help. As the episode draws to a close, the waiter notes that the photo Paula snapped shows more than two bodies in the courtyard below. Paula then rushes to the window, trips on an electrical cord, and falls out too. So that's 3 people who all fell out the same window. Okay, if you say so, Twilight Zone. As long as we don't get anyone else tumbling out that window.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Seriously?
Object known as a camera. Vintage uncertain, origin unknown. But for the greedy, the avaricious, the fleet of foot, who can run a 4-minute mile so long as they're chasing a fast buck. It makes believe that it's in a lie, but it isn't at all. It's a beckoning come-on for a quick walk around the block in the Twilight Zone.
So, a total of 4 people fall out this one window of death. It's as if no matter what, there was a mandate that everyone had to go out this window, no matter how goofy or unlikely it may seem.
How come?
Now, for me, it was mainly the demise of the 4th person, the waiter who also fell, that really struck me. How or why did he fall? Thankfully, there's an explanation for this hasty ending. According to Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic by Martin Grams Jr., the conclusion is a result of a series of changes which were requested by the studio to Rod Serling's original script. In the first draft of the episode, which was originally written for season 1, the waiter was meant to meet his demise more clearly as the result of a heart attack. However, Rod Serling was asked to please refrain the coronary histrionics so as to avoid horrifying or frightening the audience, in particular those among it who might have a heart condition themselves. The thing is, in the actual episode, we can still assume that's probably what happened, but the final edit is ambiguous. We cut away and simply hear a gasp. That brings me to my second minor issue with this episode. Killing everyone off feels harsh. These aren't the most evil characters, but they all meet their end in such a grim way.
No, I don't get it.
Maybe sprinkling some darker humor throughout in the lead up to everyone tumbling out the window would have eased us into this conclusion.
Yeah, now I get it.
Despite these issues, as I mentioned earlier, the episode still mostly works. Placing the camera into the hands of these low-level criminals made for a memorable tale. Another thing that this episode got right was the casting. Character actor Fred Clark is a real highlight. Clark nails the role of a quick-tempered, small-time crook.
Here, world. A gift from Chester Diedrich.
He manages to make an otherwise shady character oddly likable. Fred Clark perfected his brand of comedy on stage, in film, and television, where he became known for characters just like this, who you love to hate.
Key come with us?
No, you'll have to open it in your own inimitable style.
Pairing Fred Clark with Gene Carson was a wise move. Both performers have flawless comic timing, which is exactly what material like this demands. Carson may be familiar for many of her supporting roles throughout the years, but she's mainly known for her part in the 60s sitcom The Andy Griffith Show. She had a unique presence, and I think it's telling that this role was written by Rod Serling with Carson in mind.
Don't forget Woodward.
Yeah, and you too, Woodward.
Ah yes, Woodward. Adam Williams' portrayal of a small-time thief who tags along for this misadventure is certainly the most cartoonish of the bunch. However, his broad comedy is fitting, and ultimately he plays well off his co-stars. Williams is best known for his roles in Without Warning, The Big Heat, and Alfred Hitchcock's classic, North by Northwest. But fellow Twilight Zone fans will recognize him as the sailor from the episode The Hitchhiker. Now, if this type of story interests you, there's plenty more where that came from. A camera that can predict the future also appeared in the popular Goosebumps books and television adaptations. There's also an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, titled The Tale of the Curious Camera, And there's a 2014 sci-fi thriller called Time Lapse. Heck, there's even an anime called Lupin III that got in on this premise of a predictive camera. And in that case, the camera was also used at the racetrack to make some money betting on horses.
It could be loaded with black magic.
And what are you loaded with?
As a Twilight Zone comedy episode, A Most Unusual Camera ranks among the higher in the series. I'm not sure you'll find yourself rolling on the floor laughing, but there's some good stuff here. It's entertaining and well worth a watch. Just keep in mind, this isn't one of your more serious Twilight Zone outings. A Most Unusual Camera is lighthearted and campy in spirit. I'd rate A Most Unusual Camera 3 out of 5 confused Woodwards. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you've seen A Most Unusual Camera, feel free to drop your thoughts on the episode below. And don't forget, hit like, hit sub, and hit that notification bell too. The road to 3,000 continues. We're getting there. Until next time, stay safe and be well. Later.